Star Radio Sunday Jazz Brunch. Walt Adams with you. Time once again for our Share the Journey segment, sponsored by Living Resources, supporting people with disabilities. Today, talking with Todd Del Marter, the operations manager of Living Resources. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Walt. How are you?
Doing great, Todd. It's nice to have an opportunity to get to know you. I'll ask you a few questions about your job and how you support people with disabilities.
I place it in your hands, my brother.
Yes. As an operations manager at Living Resources, there's a lot of moving parts to that position. How'd you get started?
I went to work for Living Resources approximately 8 years ago. I reached out to a friend who had worked as the director of the program at the time, asking him for a reference. I had been in human services for about 30 years now. I reached out to a contact, and he said I could give you a reference or I could give you a job. And so I immediately accepted the opportunity, and my first job with Living Resources was assisting the prior director in organizing reports, right, and took part in running some groups, and eventually got the opportunity to become the operations manager.
And I understand you oversee the Structured Day program.
That's right. There are a lot of different offerings at the Structured Day program, Living Resources. It's a very robust program, and we really try to tailor it to the individuals that we're serving needs at the moment. So it can be quite fluid.
And you specialize in people who have traumatic brain injuries.
A lot of the groups that we offer are peer-based, meaning that they're run by individuals with traumatic brain injuries for individuals with traumatic brain injuries, and staff are there to sort of guide the conversation. We focus on assisting people with transitioning to life with a brain injury through family groups, financial planning and life supports, healthy cooking groups, sometimes learning or relearning how to do that. We have a men's group, a women's group. We run a small cafe once a week where we make lunch for the people who work at Living Resources, and they can come and enjoy that. Advocacy groups, community outreach groups. My personal favorite, a Dungeons and Dragons group, which is great.
That sounds like fun.
A lot of fun.
I first started to understand traumatic brain injuries when I got to be close friends with legendary jockey Ramon Dominguez. After a fall, he experienced a traumatic brain injury and was faced with whether to continue to break a record of over 5,000 wins, one of the most winningest jockeys in the world, and decided not to get back in the saddle because of the love of his wife and children, knowing that if he had one more injury, he might be paralyzed. So he made that decision, and now is a great spokesperson for people with TBIs.
You know, the brain injury, it doesn't have a face. It's a disability that you can't nail down. Traumatic brain injury can be very insidious in that somebody with an injury doesn't look like something horrible happened to them. And so people tend to assume that they're just fine. You know, the biggest challenge, in addition to the cognitive difficulties that may arise with a traumatic brain injury, is really mourning for the loss of the life that the person had prior to the injury. And it is not picky about who it chooses. We've served oncology nurses, doctors, dancers, artists, and people that, were just living regular everyday lives. So not only the loss of, the jobs, the responsibilities they had, but the friends that they had change because the individual changes, relationships change. And so it's not only the injury itself, but it's having to sort of rewrite their life story, I guess, in a way, to put back the pieces in a meaningful way, something that they feel good about. I can tell you stories of people that show up at our program that, may be affected by aphasia, which is a difficulty that arises from traumatic brain injury that causes people to not form words well. They may have the proper word in their mind, but it just won't come through. Mm-hmm. People like that can really become reclusive and silo up because they're unable to communicate. And I've seen people slowly learn how to communicate because they want to talk with their peers, because they want to be engaged. And so they slowly form words. They come out of their shells. I see that. I see people that have to utilize wheelchairs and, through perseverance and attending rehabilitative appointments and really just by wanting to do it, they slowly get to a place where maybe they're using a walker and then a cane. But to allow the person to do that with dignity, to allow them to to take risks, to allow them to explore new pathways. Those are the things that, help them grow. And just if I may for a moment, Walt,
Yes.
we're talking about dignity. There's really a cornerstone philosophy built into the waiver that my program works under. And that is that the people that are served have the right to risk and the dignity to fail.
If someone wanted to know more about your TBI program, what's the best way to find out more information?
I can be reached 518-218-0000, extension 5389. I also have an email, tdelmarter@livingresources.org.
Todd, we appreciate you sharing your story, and we wish you continued success with the work that you do.
Thank you for your time, Walt. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Todd Del Marter, the Operations Manager of Living Resources. Share the journey with Living Resources. For more information at livingresources.org. I'm Walt Adams. More music up next on the Sunday Jazz Brunch.